All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is Left Bank Books Presents Online, young adult superstar Z Brewer in conversation with Left Bank Books specialist and event coordinator. Wow. I've said that a million times and can't get it out. Sarah Holt. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore, celebrating 51 years this year. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of Z Brewer, and everyone for their outpouring of love for our bookstore. We have adapted to the current situation and are bringing you the things that you love the most about Left Bank Books with curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. We are very happy to be able to bring our event series virtual, to be able to celebrate authors both local like Z or national, international as well, that we would never have been able to do without the virtual events. So we are happy that you are here. We hope that you enjoyed this event, and we hope that you support Z Brewer and Left Bank Books by purchasing a signed copy for you and for all of your friends at left-bank.com. And if you are watching this event late, but you will have until Friday night to order from us to get a personalized copy. Z is going to stop by and do a back alley signing, and we will get signed and personalized copies of this new book. And purchasing a copy from Left Bank Books allows us to keep this event series going. It allows us to keep our bookstore and staff here through the most unusual of times. It helps support local, and I am certain that you are aware that it is incredibly important to shop at the stores that you want to keep around. So thank you all so much for your support. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis, including the incredible Sarah Holt. We will be taking questions from the audience at the end of the event, so you can type your questions as a comment, and we will get to those at the end, but you can type them up at any point in time. And be sure to follow Left Bank Books on Facebook to be notified about all of our fantastic virtual events. And now I would like to welcome Sarah Holt, who will introduce our incredible author.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm the Children's and Teen Specialist at Left Bank Books and a longtime Z Brewer fan. We're so happy to be able to bring them to our virtual event platform after having hosted so many in-person events over the years. To get my highly official intro, Z Brewer is the New York Times best-selling author of several books, including the Chronicles of Vladimir Todd series, and more short stories than they can recall. Their preferred pronouns are they, them. When not drying readers' tears because they killed off a beloved character, they write books. Z is also an outspoken mental health and anti-bullying advocate. Plus, they have awesome hair, even in the middle of a haircutless pandemic. Z lives in Missouri with a husband person, one children person, and 4 furry overlords that some people refer to as cats. Their latest book is Into the Real, which was 3.5 years in the making. So at long last, please join me in welcoming, one day after book birthday, Z Brewer.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Sarah.
I guess we don't have to pause for applause. I'm sure everyone is uproariously clapping.
Go ahead. We'll pause. Applaud. It's all right.
So, to start off, tell us about Into the Real. Give us the long version of the elevator pitch.
It is such a complex book. It is so difficult to describe to people. But really, for me, Into the Real is about a journey to find one's own truth. And Quinn in 3 different worlds, Quinn is a different person, or so they think in the beginning. Quinn in the first world, it presents as genderqueer. In the first world, it's kind of like Silent Hill and scary. Each world is a nightmare in its own. The second Broom is the name of the town. The second town, the second Broom, is a nightmare in that, yes, it's all sunshiny and happiness in Stepford, but it's really scary because there's a gay conversion camp and stuff like that. So there's some really violent, really realistic things happening. In the third Broom, in that Broom, Quinn presents as female. In the third Broom, Quinn presents as male, and it's kind of this post-apocalyptic military thing going on. And as we go through Quinn's story, Quinn starts to realize that they may be just one person going through all of these realities. And really they have to decide which reality is the one that they choose to exist in. It's complex.
It is, and we touched on the fact that there's so much going on in here that we're not going to be able to talk about today because it would ruin way too much of the twisty, turny surprises that you get while you're reading. So keep that in mind. We are just scratching the surface. Where did this idea come from? Did you have a particular world that it started with, or did it sort of all crash down on you?
It started with Star Trek. I love Star Trek Next Gen, okay? And we were watching, my husband and I were watching the end episode where Picard is flipping through time. And my husband said, God, it's so strange. Wouldn't it be strange to flip through time like that? And I said, well, it'd be worse if you were flipping through lives. And really, that's where it came from. And that night is when I really conceptualized, well, the first concept of the book. When I first conceptualized it was then, because the idea of flipping through lives, really, it's a scary feeling. And then I was thinking about, being genderqueer and what people's perceptions of non-binary people can be. And it kind of sewed itself together, But yeah, started with Star Trek.
And so when you were writing, because as we've said, this is three, at least when we approach it, it is three completely different universes. Yeah. They've got overlap, but they are each their own plot with their own characters who each have their own through lines. How do you approach writing something like that?
Initially, I approached it by writing straight through, beginning to end, but it really quickly revealed that that's not a cohesive way to write a story like this. So I had to go back and just focus on them each as their own book, basically, and then sew them together kind of in this Frankenstein style way. But it is complex. And the thing is that not only is Quinn different in each world, but all of the characters that are in one world are in each of the other worlds, but they're different. Whereas your best friend may be your enemy in the different worlds. So the relationships completely shift, and keeping track of that was difficult. So I had to write the first town, the second, the third, and then kind of piece them together.
Did you go through a lot of changes with that, with who's who in what world, and this person I thought would be the enemy, but it's not working type of?
Not a lot. I mean, pretty much the relationships are how I initially thought that they would be. I really liked flipping them on their head. Okay, you are their best friend. In this world, you are their absolute enemy and the worst thing that could ever happen to them. And it was fun to play with relationships and really explore them and explore those feelings of when you're, as a reader, falling in love with, oh, I love that you guys have such a great friendship in this world, and then coming to another world going, oh, this is horrific, and it makes me hate you more because you were their best friend. But it was a lot of fun to play with those.
I will say, when I've read other books that have sort of a either it's dual timelines or multiple points of view where you're switching between more than one person, a lot of times I experience every time there's a switch, no, I was invested here. But having the characters, not the same characters, but sort of continuations of the people threaded through, made it really interesting to read this version of that sort of narrative.
Yeah.
So do you have a Quinn that you identify with the most?
Oh, absolutely. The Quinn in the first world, in Broom 1, is definitely the Quinn I relate to the most. And I think that's because they're a loner. They're really not a follower. They're kind of their own person. They're very independent. And they're also very loyal to the people that they care about. And really a survivor of horrible things. Kind of staying in the moment and we've got to move forward and trudge through. We've been through some horrible crap, but we can do this. So I really feel like Quinn 1 is really me at my core.
And Now, all three Quinns are written from a first-person point of view, so you
Yep.
have to sort of go there with
Yeah.
all of them. Was there anything that was a real stretch to write that you might have had to research or just really put yourself in the right mindset to get to?
The second Quinn, the one in that where they present as females, that was a really difficult thing for me. And I think it's because that Quinn is kind of subdued and kind of holds back her opinion and just kind of observes things. And I'm not that person. I'm very outspoken. I'm not the person that's just going to sit back and watch things happen. I'm going to make things happen. So that was really difficult. And, you know, she's really girly. And that was weird because I'm so not.
I have a feeling some people will want to give that Quinn a good talking to. It's perfect.
Same.
I have an invader here.
That's right. Kitties are always welcome.
So one thing that all of your books have in common, from my perspective and from, I think, from what I've heard you talk about, is that you are invested in letting people who might feel alone or isolated know that there are other people out there like them who feel like they do, who have the same interests, who might be going through some of the same things. And I think we can see that going back to Vlad Todd. It addressed bullying. It addressed kids who might present themselves differently than the normal kid. Yeah. But some of your more recent books have been touching on things that by our cultural standards are really personal subject matters. So it's tempting to say that your writing has gotten more personal. Do you see it that way?
I don't see it that way. I understand culturally why people might, but I think the reason is because when I look at things like Vlad Todd, I'm looking at bullying and those feelings, but through a lens of vampires and that type of fiction. This is without a lens. This is more broadly, you know, the stuff I've done recently is more broadly in your face, and here it is. But those same feelings have been explored in the past. It's just in a different way. But I hope that I will always explore that, because it's very important to me that people feel like they don't belong somewhere, that they do belong somewhere, and that somebody does understand them.
And what has drawn you to write the books that you write when you do write them? Is it just like through ideas or?
I feel like they're therapy, really. You can look back at my books, at each book that I've written and what I was going through at that point in time. And you can see where I was in my life. Because when I have something going on in my head or in my heart, I've got to pour it out on the page. You know, the only way to deal with the yuckiness is to dig deep into that personal well and then fling it on the page and just be free of it. So for me, it's just the cheapest form of therapy possible.
So is there a lot of writing that does not make it to publication because that's
so much? You know how like you have to know the story, but really I'd say maybe 60% of what I actually know doesn't end up in the published book, you know, like small little secret things.
So there's a lot of all three Quinns exploring labels. It starts in their heads with, what do I think I identify with? How do I explain this to myself? And then naturally becomes how can I communicate this to other people? And that usually manifests as, what do I tell them my label is? What role do you think that labels play for people, both how they process themselves and how they present to the outside world? And what role do you think they should have?
I think I've always said, I really think people need to realize that they're not soup cans. You don't require a label to know what's on the inside. And labels can be very important to people, but you can only slap a label on yourself. You're the only one that can tell the world, okay, this is who I am. And you don't have to. It's perfectly all right. It's totally acceptable not to have any label assigned to you. If society wants to slap a label on you and you're like, that's not how I identify, or that's not how I identify currently, then you're totally welcome to say, I'm sorry, that's not me, that's incorrect, and then move on. But yeah, I very much believe that labels are only as important as we ourselves make them.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking as someone who has gone through that process, not with gender identity, but I do identify as queer, and it's a very intentional label that I picked because it's fake.
I get that.
I think, and the book does explore some of that, like, how specific do I need to be here? And I think it seems like Quinn comes up with a different answer for different worlds, for different people.
Depending on different experiences, yeah.
And that the how specific do I need to be is different when you're talking about internally versus externally.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's most reflected, for me, honestly, I think it's most reflected in the third world where everything's militaristic and you have Quinn in charge of the resistance. And also, you know, in a military way, being like, I present as male, I'm not allowed to say, hey, you know what, it's wrong that females can't be out on the battlefield. I can't say that because society says that I can't, but I really support you and understand. It's very strange.
Yeah, that world is really interesting because there's parts of it that resonate with sort of some science fiction that we know that takes place in the future military, and in sort of a different political climate. But then other parts of the military are so identifiable with things that we hear in the news about the way there are strict gender roles, and there are culturally things that are acceptable to do and be when you are in the military versus
my husband was in the military for 6.5 years. So we saw a lot of that very much firsthand. And it's really wild to think here we are in 2020. I mean, let's forgive the year 2020, but here we are, you know, in the 2000s, and these things are still going on, which shouldn't be. You know, it should be a time of equality, and it's just not in that regard.
There's a lot of throwbacks.
Yeah.
And I think in that universe, it is jarring when you're talking about something that we don't recognize as the current state of the world. So we assume it's in alternate version or in the future.
Yeah.
And then, well, here's that same old stuff.
Guess what? It's still a problem.
So speaking of the same old stuff that we deal with over and over again, there are a lot of people out there who think that teenagers are too young to be figuring out sexual orientation, gender identity, that anything they express is automatically an experimental phase that should kind of be, at best, tolerated, and it'll go away on its own, and that it's therefore inappropriate content to put something like this in a book that is certainly not only to be read by teenagers, but teenagers are a desired audience. Why do you think that young adult is the place for this story?
Well, the thing is that teens are already exploring these things. Whether or not their parents want them to, they're already looking at their gender identity. They're already looking at their orientation. It's a thing, and they can deny it as much as they want, but isn't it better to kind of support teens when they're going through this really tumultuous time? Because being a teenager sucks. It is the worst thing in the world. It's so hard because you're figuring out who you are, how you feel, what you want to do in the world. So I really think it's important that people, one, listen to teenagers because they're really intelligent, involved people, and two, just support them on their journey. They're going to go through a lot. Some of the things they're going to be like, okay, this is the label I decide, this is it. I'm going to put this label on myself. And then they explore some and realize, you know what, that actually doesn't fit me. And so things may change and fluctuate for them. And I think the smartest, most responsible thing we can do is be there and give them things like this, like the type of fiction that they need, where they can see themselves reflected. Because if you don't see yourself in fiction, you're really going to question your self-worth. You're really going to go, well, then I'm different. I'm a weirdo, I'm a freak, because I don't see myself anywhere. So I'd rather that kids could go out there and be like, you know what? I identify with that. I totally relate to those feelings. I understand. And I'm starting to understand myself because of it. So teen fiction's crucial.
And I think that's one maybe unintentional advantage of the triple narrators is that more teens can relate to that, because while the Quinns do have a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences in how they're approaching the world and themselves and each other and other people. So one of the things that I most appreciated about this book is that the Quinns are sometimes often surprised, I'd say, by who in their lives is supportive and at what points and of what. And that goes both ways, is sometimes people surprise them by really having their back when they didn't necessarily think that person was that important or close to them. And other times it's someone that they thought they could trust who, it turns out, maybe that was undeserved. Why was it important to you to present those moments that way rather than making their relationships more predictable?
That was very much a personal experience thing, and me wanting other people to see, you know what, this happened. A word of caution, because I have had people that are incredibly close to me not support me in a time when I just knew they would. Like, of course, this person's going to have my back. Of course, they're going to support me. Wait, what? You know, and then people that came out of the blue that are like, hey, I have your back. That feeling of like being unsettled and wobbly, you know, not knowing like your foundation of the people that will support you is very jarring. And so I made sure to include that because it was so jarring to me to experience it. I know other people are experiencing it. I just never saw it coming. And I know other people must not either.
So all of the Quinns are separated from their biological family for most of the narrative. Yeah. There's sometimes that they encounter them in different timelines or in different worlds. But for the most part, they're interacting with people who are not blood relations. Can you talk about the experience of that found family?
The thing is that's another personal experience thing. I have not spoken to my family in years and years, for about 8 years now, and I've realized that family is so much bigger than that. Family are the people that show up and that love you no matter what, and that will support you and listen to you and just be in your day to day, whether or not you act that day like you want them. And family is so much more than blood. You know, just because you're born related to people doesn't mean that you're invested in one another's lives. You know, I think that the feelings are so much more important than the birth certificate.
So you've touched on this a little bit, but I want to really call it out. Obviously, anyone who wants to read this book is more than welcome. We want as many people to read it as possible. But who do you think, what reader is it most important finds this book?
I think the teens, honestly, that are really feeling like they don't belong, or like maybe they're questioning things about their own identity, whether it's gender identity or whatever, whether they're questioning things about themselves and feeling unsettled in the world. I think they'll really benefit from it because things do mesh together in a way and do, I feel like, speak to that, you know? So I feel like there'll be some stability offered in it to people that are feeling that way, you know? Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we might have some questions from the audience.
Ooh.
So call Shane back in here.
I am back. Yeah, and I wanted to kind of add on to that. Like, anyone that wants to expand on their worldview, like even for someone who isn't dealing with their own identity,
Yeah.
that wants to like understand and like feel the experience of someone who is gender queer or questioning or whatever that may be. Like, I think that it really does help readers to see something that they might not have seen before. So
Yeah, being able to wrap their head around something that might seem really foreign to them. Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah.
So my question is to kind of get things rolling, to tell people that really they can ask any question whatsoever. But do you have, so, my hair has seen better days in the pandemic. Your hair is doing very well in the pandemic. I have some gray roots that are coming in. Like, do you get like special help from, or is this all your?
I stay home wearing my mask and washing my hands 24/7. I really never go to the salon. I don't go to restaurants or anything. I used to do my own hair for years and years. And so, with the pandemic, I've kind of had to go back to those roots, literally go back to those roots and figure it out. So I'm cutting it, I'm bleaching it, I'm dyeing it. This is all me. Fortunately, it's a really easy, surprisingly, a very easy hairstyle to maintain.
Bravo, then. Yeah. All right. So the first question is going to be from Nick. Nick says, first of all, I'm a huge fan of this book, and it has stayed in my mind for weeks after I finished it. I couldn't put it down for 2 days until it was finished. And I know you've touched upon a little bit of this, but if there's anything that you might want to reiterate, did you pull from any specific real life experiences as a genderqueer person for this novel, or perhaps real experiences from others?
Oh, it definitely comes from me. It is very much about my journey to find the label that I've chosen to slap on myself, to find out, I am non-binary, I am genderqueer, and I'm comfortable with that. I've had a very long, tumultuous journey to get to that place of self-acceptance, but really the book reflects that. And I've been writing it for so long, it's interesting to watch how the book itself has changed as I have changed. But yeah.
And I know that there's been like a lot of push for own voices.
Yeah.
And do you feel like you are like helping that and really encouraging that as a movement? And can you speak a little bit to like the power of that movement and the incredible things that it's doing?
Yeah, I'm very much a supporter of own voices. I feel like a lot of POC people and queer people are not represented in fiction by themselves. And if people want to write about someone who is queer, it's hard for them. They can never really understand what it is like. It's personal experience. It's like this is a horrible, horrible analogy, but I'm bad at them. If you're a farmer, you know what it's like to be a farmer. But if you're, say, a bookseller, you don't know what it's like to be a farmer. You're not a farmer. So I would really like it if people would support own voices, because so many queer authors and POC authors are not being heard or not having their books recognized. And we can change that. We can fix it. But it's a matter of dedicating ourselves to that cause.
Have you gotten to connect with other non-binary authors?
Yeah, a few of them. There aren't a lot that I know of that are out there unpublished. I mean, Cyrus Parker is out there, and they are wonderful, just wonderful. But we haven't met in person yet, obviously, because 2020.
All the conferences are gone.
And that's really where all of us interact. No authors have friends outside of conferences.
All right. Next question is from Colby. Colby says that they get to ask you questions on Discord all the time, so struggling with like, what do I ask that I haven't already asked? But can you say anything about your next works? Anything, whatever you can say about them, even as simple as it's a video game, it's a book, etc.
I'm actually currently the lead scriptwriter for Poorly Timed Games. And we're working on a video game, and it is incredible, and I can't talk about it because NDA, but it's so cool, and it's so very sci-fi and awesome and representative, and I'm very, very proud of it. It kind of fell into my lap, and I'm so blessed. It's a lot of fun. I have always wanted to be an author, number one, and I've always wanted to write a video game. And here I am, so really kind of living the life, you know? But yeah, I love it. I wish I could talk about it.
Yeah. Are you a big gamer?
Oh, yes, definitely. You know, across platforms. I love it. Have been for a very long time. Too long. Back during like original NES days, Atari 2600, you know, I've been there a while.
Do you have any recommendations for games for people who are primarily invested in the writing and the storytelling?
Oh my goodness, BioShock Infinite, hands down. Hands down, the story is just seamless. It really is. All of the BioShock stories are really, really well written, but BioShock Infinite was incredible. One of my favorites.
Angela says, seeing as Quinn has a lot to figure out in the novel, was there ever a part in the writing process where you and Quinn had difficulties understanding a part of themselves or their life? How did you get through that?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, yeah, of course there were. A lot of my struggles with trying to understand their life was with actually Quinn in Broom 3, where they present as male, because you come into this world where everything is very militaristic. And while my husband was in the military, so I was there by his side, it is not my experience. And so I had a lot of conversations with him saying, you know, look, in the military, what is this like? These feelings, what is that like? And he told me so many stories about people that he knew. You know, there was one woman here at this base, and this is what happened. This is what she went through. And all of these different experiences, I really had to pull that together and try to understand what it's like. I don't think I ever can because I'm not in the military. I have great respect for them all, especially dealing with what they do.
Colby has another question. And did you get any writer's block while writing this book? What did you do to get past it?
I think this is the only book where I've ever really had writer's block. It was very, very difficult because basically wrote 3 books and then sewed them together. And there were times when I was writing both the second broom and the third broom where I had nothing. You know, it's like, here I am, here are the major points of what I want to hit, but I have nothing. I can't fill in the blanks. And really for me, it was the key to getting through the writer's block was not writing. It's funny because I think that we beat ourselves up as writers so much. You know, it's like, you have to get this many words. You've got to write the story. I've got to finish this. But that pressure, especially that self-pressure, is too much. And sometimes you really need to give yourself permission, you know, permission to like, you know what? I'm not writing. I'm going to take some time. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to read. I'm going to play video games. I'm going to do anything that's not writing to just kind of give my brain some peace. And then when I come back to it, I could write. So sometimes you just have to be gentle with yourself, like anything.
Do you map when you write, since a lot of your stories kind of are very large? Do you have to like keep track of things, and how do you do that?
Not until this book. This book, I really had to. And honestly, there were a lot of sticky notes all over my wall. It was the only way I could follow it because there were so many different little details, and I would forget about things. And then I'd go over to the wall and I'd look at the sticky notes and go, oh crap, I forgot about this completely. So that was really important. I've never storyboarded before. And so that was an adventure. I think it paid off, but it was definitely a learning curve.
I have to say that I appreciated the descriptions of the characters that we got pretty early on and were detailed enough that I could then plug that same visual into the next world. It really did help a lot with track. That's
cool. That's cool.
Celeste is asking, it says, hi, Z.
Hi, Celeste.
You talked about how you listen to music while writing books. What did you listen to while writing Into the Real?
My goodness, what did I listen to? I always listen to a lot of My Chem. Okay, My Chemical Romance is always my go-to for things. With this one, I listened to a lot of just musical numbers that I would find on YouTube where there were no lyrics at all. just music. And it's really strange for me because generally I pick one song and then put that on repeat forever. But you can't listen to one song for 3.5 years. No. So yeah, I listened to a lot of stuff that just didn't have lyrics that would kind of get me in the mood. There are different things you can look up on YouTube. There is like writing music, things like that, even sleeping music, stuff like that have no lyrics, something that's just repetitive, and it kept me in there, which this whole book has been a very strange journey, but unique, and I'm up for a challenge, so it's been good.
Andrew says, I'm loving this conversation so much. Z, since it's Halloween season, and I know we're both horror fans, I would love to know if you've had any thoughts about what horror as a genre specifically can do with identity questions that other genres maybe can't do.
Ooh, that's so good. That's a great question. I feel like one of the reasons I love horror so much is I feel like it's kind of a mirror to our souls. I feel like it's things that we're experiencing in the world we can express in horror, in that in horror they look like, zombies and vampires and demons and faces ripped off. They look like stuff like that, but really we're exploring the human condition. One of my favorite horror movies is Cabin in the Woods. And one of the reasons I like it so much is it turns horror on its head, and you look at it as a horror fan and as a critic, and it kind of plays to the personalities of the roles we are assigned in life and how we break out of them as long as we're true to ourselves. But yeah.
I'll say for the horror fans out there, you will really like Broom 1.
Oh yes, if you like Silent Hill at all, you will like Broom 1. That's actually my favorite world, to be honest.
Scary monster invention is
absolutely
running rife
there. Colby asks, unrelated to the book, but what is one thing we must all have for Halloween this year, since we're all stuck at home?
A mask.
A mask, yeah.
A mask. You must have a mask. You must wear your mask if you leave your home. That is the one thing that is crucial.
A mask, like face cover.
Like mask.
And then a mask.
And if you look like at Etsy and all different kinds of places like that, there are really cute Halloween masks going around now. So, there are tons of options, but safety is key, because right now the real horror is the scary thing, and we need to do whatever we can to protect ourselves. But yeah, definitely the mask. But don't get extra candy, because there aren't going to be trick-or-treaters, and then you're just going to eat it all. So
is there something wrong with eating it all?
It depends on your goal here. If you plan on wearing jeans ever again, maybe slow down.
That's something to worry about for next spring.
That's a 2021 problem.
We have 2020 problems. That's not one of them.
The future. What's that right now? There's no future. There's no time.
So speaking of the pandemic in 2020, have you taken up any new hobbies, or how have you been filling your non-writing time?
I started to take up new hobbies. It didn't stick. A long time ago, when I was a kid, my family gardened a lot. We always had a huge vegetable garden. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start gardening. That'll be great. Well, I started growing these really weird looking cucumbers. I don't know what happened to them. And then I think I got distracted or bored, and they died like, I don't know, a couple of weeks after I actually got cucumbers. And then I kind of looked at it and went, meh. Like I've had all these things I've meant to do. I have the time during the pandemic. I've meant to do it. But really, do I have the time? My life isn't all that different from before the pandemic. I'm at home a lot. I'm not super social. I'm not wearing pants. It's pretty much the same. So I meant to find hobbies. No.
I'm going to ask if your cats are really happy that everyone's home, but
they weren't in the beginning. In the beginning, they were like, what is this? My husband's home and my daughter was home, and they're like, no, we hate this. You all have to leave. And now my daughter's down in the dorms, and they're used to my husband working from home. So they're like, okay, this is fine. But when he goes back to work outside of the house, things are going to be chaotic. But I'll be the favorite again, so who cares?
I'm super jealous of everyone that took up puzzling, because I love puzzles. But I just I didn't have the time. I didn't have the mental, I mean, you would think you would have mental space for puzzles, but I get so into puzzles.
Yeah.
I'm just no, days would go by and I would be oh, I was supposed to be working. Oh,
It takes a lot to focus to finish puzzles. That's why I never finish them. I start them and I mean to finish them. But then, then it's oh, look, I better clean that puzzle up because, the cats want that table or something.
Exactly. Cats are not helpful for puzzles.
Not even a little.
So if anyone else has any questions, we do have quite a bit more time left for some more Q&A. Sarah, do you have any other things that you're thinking about?
Do you have, well, I started with, do you have any recommendations for books that maybe you encountered that helped you figure things out before you had written one for other people? But then it can just be a general. Do you have any books to recommend to read right now?
Oh my goodness. I'm reading so many of them right now. I'm looking around my desk going, which one? Where? I'm reading so many of them right now. I just got, I don't have it in my office. I just got Addie Laurie, something Addie Laurie by Victoria V.E. Schwab. And I started it last night and it's really good. She's brilliant. I think she is the author to watch. I really do. And she's so nice and evil and awesome.
The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue just came out yesterday as well. You share a book birthday.
We do. Ellen Hopkins, I believe, had a book out yesterday too, and so did Shannon Hale. Yeah.
Ellen Hopkins, great debut.
All available for sale at Left Bank Books.
Ding. Hint.
We had another question roll in. This one's adorable. Will you adopt another kitty with an EH?
Oh, I wish I could. I really, really love kitties, but my husband's we have to limit this, okay? You are crazy with the cats, and if you keep bringing them home, there's not going to be room for me. And I'm but it's a kitty. So unfortunately, no, not for a good long time. Fang is now 10 years old. So, we have a long time with him left. And I said to my husband, okay, I will not get a new one until we have lost our kitty. So, but Fang is going to live till he's 90 or something. I don't know. He's already a grumpy old man. Someday soon.
Have you proposed a tiny kitty that will stay tiny?
If only. There's the idea. Maybe I could just get it and not tell him and then hide it in my office somewhere in a teacup.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's what I'm doing. And I'm blaming you, Shane.
Great. It'll be fine. We have a great relationship. Yeah.
So we haven't really touched on, I know you have a really positive relationship with a lot of educators and are really passionate about the way that reading introducing kids to reading in certain books in school can be really a key role of an educator. Have you thought about how you'd like to see Into the Real in an educational setting?
I haven't given that a lot of thought. I think that if it is something that is picked apart from a literary standpoint, it would probably fit best in that way, kind of like in an English class or a literature type class, picking it apart that way, because it is such an emotional book, but it is also really technically complex. So I think that would be really beneficial. But as far as teachers relating to their students through fiction, I feel like if you are involved in GSA at all or curious about what it is like, then I think that this is definitely a book to explore. I would love to have GSA groups doing little book clubs about it because I think it has a lot to offer. I mean, not to be biased or anything.
Well, and I'll call it, in Broom 2, there's a lot more representation than just looking at gender queer characters. There's people all across the LGBTQIA+ spectrum.
And something about Broom 2 actually that just brought up. Broom 2 was very difficult to write because of the, pray away the gay camp. I watched so many interviews with people who had survived those experiences, read so many articles about people talking about, this is what I went through, this is what people don't see. And so I have read a review that was talking about, oh my God, those horrors, they can't possibly be real. And I'm like, yes, they are. Exactly what people are doing to queer kids. And it's horrific. And I wanted to show that is still happening. It's barbaric and awful, and people are still putting teens through that. So the realism of that was incredibly important to me.
Yeah, there are some very hard to read passages of that. It's important to get it out there.
They were hard to write too, absolutely.
And hard to write the characters who have those perspectives, I'm sure. There's some
absolutely
terrible things coming out of people's mouths.
Yeah. And I think that it really, you said about the representation, how there's so much in Broom 2. I think that's why there had to be, across the board, there had to be so much representation because of where they were and what they were experiencing as a group. And there are uncomfortable things in there. There are moments of dead naming and things like that. And they're horrible. They're awful things. But there are things people are really experiencing. And it doesn't mean the person doing it is a really nice person at all. It's just, it is happening. And we can't look at YA fiction and say, look, everything is sunshine and roses and everybody lives happily ever after. Everything's tied up with a nice little bow, because life isn't like that. Life is messy. Life is dirty. Life is gritty. And teens, especially queer teens, are going through the brunt of that. So it's important that they see that they're not alone,
And as awful as some of the things in that world are, well, all the worlds have some awful things, but that one has one that might be a little more realistic for some people out there. But it's also just such a good illustration of resilience and resistance, even when you're faced with terrible things.
Yeah.
Can we talk about social media just a little bit? Because I know that it's been really hard for so many people. And I know that you have kind of been on social media and a variety of platforms. And sometimes it's very difficult to be a public person on social media, and just having that access, having like your experiences kind of lived out for other people on social media in real time. So A, where can people find you on social media? And B, what advice do you have for people that maybe are just kind of like, I can't do social media right now?
Well, for one, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, both at but you can call me Z, that letter U. And I left Facebook a long time ago. It was incredibly toxic. So I got rid of that, and my life has been so much better ever since. I'm also largely hanging out in the Minion Horde Discord, and the link to that is on my website, zbrewerbooks.com. Down on the right, there's a link to the Discord. And something I like about it is it's really the safest place on the internet. Everyone there, all of the minions are so open and loving and supportive. There's not been anything negative. Everyone's just there to hear. We have different channels. Like one of the channels that I'm very proud of is the mental health channel, mental health and awareness channel. And if someone's having an episode of depression, they go in there and say, you guys, I'm going through this. And someone steps in and says, hey, I'm here to listen. So I'm incredibly proud of the minions. I'm incredibly proud of that Discord. And that is really my safe place to go when, Twitter gets ugly, because Twitter does get ugly. And there are a lot of people that say, look, like you said about social media, how do I approach it? I don't know that I can. If you're an author and feeling like this is something you're expected to do, you have to do, you really don't have to. It's really playing to your own comfort level. If you're out there and let's say you're putting videos out there, because I'm on YouTube too. If you're putting videos out there, but you really are uncomfortable, your audience is going to see that anyway. So why don't you do something that does make you comfortable? Write articles, write stories, and put things out there, and just take care of yourself first. Promotion it's incredibly important as an author, but what's more important is taking care of yourself and your mental health. That's the first thing. Is if you don't take care of number one, how are you going to reach your readers at all in any effective manner?
For anyone who isn't aware, the Minion Horde is the group that grew up around the Chronicles of Vladimir Todd and has since morphed and developed into this glorious, self-sustaining entity.
The group that makes me feel very old when that first gen of minions are like, hi, I graduated from college. And I'm like, what? But you're in middle school.
Stop it. Stop growing.
Yeah. I'm not getting any older. What's happening?
And this is a good place to add, but if anyone is looking locally or nationally for resources for genderqueer and trans, the Metro Trans Umbrella Group has a lot of resources on their website. They are an incredible group that do incredible things. They house people, they feed people. They're doing so much work, and they are needing donations. So if you are watching, you've already bought Z's book, you have already supported Left Bank Books by purchasing like other books, the new V.E. Schwab, whatever the case may be, and are looking for other good things to do, you can support MTUG as well. So
yeah, please do.
Pitch.
Incredibly important. MTUG is hugely important.
Yeah. And we have, I don't know what this means. Not a cult. What were we talking about? Oh, the Minion Horde. Okay. Like,
okay. So we have a tagline now. Okay. We tell people, hey, we're the Minion Horde. We're totally not a cult. And we even have shirts that say totally not a cult, you know, because you have to warn people. We're not a cult. You can join us. It's all right. Yeah. Even if you don't identify as a minion in particular, if you're a fan of my stuff, I still refer to you as a minion, but you know, I hope that you'll come to the Discord and interact with people, because my fans are very loyal and very supportive. And I don't know that there is one of them that has not experienced bullying or something in their life. So they come together to really just tackle the hard issues and hold each other up, which I'm the most proud of, because there are fan bases and then there's the Minion Horde, and they're a completely different entity. And without them, I wouldn't do any of this, not just because I wouldn't be able to, which I wouldn't be able to, but they are the driving force that keeps me writing and keeps me digging things up and putting them on the page. So I owe them everything.
Recommendation for you, Z, if you haven't already read it, Black Flamingo by Dean Alta.
Black Flamingo. Wow, what a great title. Oh my goodness.
Ada, here, I have it behind me. Hold on. Yeah. Dean Ada. So
Dean
this
Ada
came out in May and is British and mixed race gay teen growing up in London. I should be giving you this copy. So I'll bring this to the store and give it to you.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, such a good book. Awesome. I think it would be a really kind of way more realistic. So like if you are watching and are a reader of a wide variety of queer young adult literature, like as long as you don't just love like the science fiction or the horror aspect of, like, if you are willing to be more realistic, which, you know, maybe you're not.
Give it a try. You never know.
Exactly.
So you mentioned this book took 3.5 years to write. And in 3.5 years, obviously, a ton of things have changed in the world. People's understanding of non-binary people and things like gender-neutral pronouns, the attitude towards LGBTQIA+ people in general, the realities of fascistic governments, which comes into play in Boom 3. Was there anything you had to go back and change due to what's going on in current events, either because you didn't need to explain something anymore, or because it was...
I had to dial back some of the explanation. And, you know, when it came to like different things that queer teens are going through, queer people are going through, I had to dial back some of the explanations, partly because sometimes you just don't need to explain things. This is the norm, and you should just do this and know this. And if you don't, then catch up with the rest of us. So I had to dial that back. But the interesting thing is that when writing Broom 3, because of the politics that are going on in the war and some of the things that they're facing, I started writing this 3.5 years ago, and it reflects, Broom 3 reflects a lot of what's happening now, which is absolutely terrifying. I think I might be magic, and I had made it 2020 happen, and I'm so sorry. It's like, damn. Why can't my other books come true?
The last question that we'll take is going to be from Colby, who is very curious about what I guess you were all eating for dinner tonight. So I guess this is for all of us.
I'm eating red beans and rice because red beans and rice, it's the best thing. I love food from like New Orleans. It's some incredible stuff down there. So I have a wonderful recipe that I actually learned when we lived down on the Gulf. So I will be eating that. Been cooking a lot during the pandemic, which is good.
I've been told I'm getting tacos, so.
You've been told. You're getting tacos. I hope you want them.
I was told I was getting tacos last night too, so that did not happen.
Somebody not delivering?
My event went late last night, so I ended up eating like just random things from the kitchen. So
you deserve tacos, Shane.
Thank you.
I subscribe to a meal box because pandemic, and so.
How is that? Is that cool?
I really like it. I'm a vegetarian, so I went with a vegan one so that I had like the most options. So I purple carrot. I love it.
Nice.
I'm gonna make parsnip and carrot bhajis with tamarind green beans.
Wow, aren't we fancy?
It certainly sounds that way.
All right, so I said last question, but this is the last question from Ashley, who has not asked a question previously, but is asking, probably way too soon to ask, but will there be a sequel, or is this more of a standalone book?
This is absolutely a standalone. I feel like I have said everything that I have to say in that book, though I understand why people might want more because there are so many worlds and there's something at the end that might make you go, but there could be, but I feel like I brought it all together, and that's really where I want to stop. I don't know, as far as books go, I don't know what's coming next just yet, but I have so many ideas and so many different things started. It's just a matter of time for that.
All right, so this is your reminder at the end of the event that if you order from Left Bank Books, left-bank.com, a link in the comments. If you order before Friday night, you will get the opportunity to have your book signed and personalized. So you can ask for, like, I want this book signed to me, or I want this book signed to my best friend. Just write your name or whoever's name you want it signed to in the comments. And Z will be coming by to do a back alley signing, and will sign your book. And it will be like something that Z will actually touch, and then we'll have to be quarantined.
It could possibly be diseased. You should spray that down. No, I'm healthy, I promise.
No, we're all good.
Yeah.
Well, Z, I want to thank you, Sarah. You have done such a fantastic job. Thank you so much for doing this event. Z, thank you for writing this book. Thank you for doing this event with us. Happy belated book birthday. And audience, thank you for joining us today.
Virtual hugs for everyone.
Right, virtual hugs. Thank you guys both so much. You've been, of course, wonderful, like Left Bank always is. And thank you everyone who tuned in. I really appreciate it. And don't forget that I love you, because I do.
Thank you. All right, well, audience, we will see you next time. Z, we will see you soon. And have a great evening. Everyone enjoy dinner.
Bye, guys.
Bye.